We need to talk. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. It is officially the first video of the year. It is currently New Year's Eve and I'm on my way out to go with my friends, but I thought before I go out, let's address some drama. Let's start the year off addressing some plebs. I just can't think of a better way to start the year. So let's get into it. I tried to throw that and I hit myself. You saw, I don't know why I'm describing it. So if you've been watching this channel for any considerable amount of time, 5 seconds even would be enough time to know that I am a trans adult who is against transitioning children. This is something that out of all the things that I have evolved on, changed my opinion on over time, came to a different understanding of over time, for which I've been on YouTube for 7 years now. This is one of those things that I've been very consistent on the entire time. I have not switched up, you know? I've gone through a lot of changes in my life, the same one of them. And to people who support the 100% objectively experimental, chemical, and physical castration of minors, oftentimes before they're even old enough to attain a driver's permit or a driver's license, to those people, I am basically public enemy number one because they can take it from Matt Walsh.
What is a woman?
They can take it from Ben Shapiro.
I said certified freak 7 days a week. Wet ass P word. Make that pullout game weak.
And honey, they can take it from Miss Candace Owens.
This bitch so crazy.
This girl is a guy.
Guys.
But to hear it from a trans woman, they lose their shit. It's kind of glorious, really. Which is what makes this drama so funny. And it's a year-long drama. This is a drama that has resurged every few months. And I've never addressed it, but I guess today I'm just bored. A year ago, I went on the Joe Rogan podcast. It was an amazing experience. It was an experience that, obviously with the type of career that I have, that is the creme de la creme. That is the highest point. You have peaked once you have been on Joe Rogan. Despite the reaction to my episode being overwhelmingly positive, I would say 99.99999% of Joe Rogan's audience was entirely receptive to having a trans woman such as myself on the show. Despite the reputation as being transphobic, I didn't get any hate at all. I know that sounds crazy, but from Joe Rogan's audience, I genuinely don't remember ever seeing one hate comment since I've been on. However, of course, always there to supply the hate, because it's just such in demand, is trans activists. So all year since going on the Joe Rogan podcast, in waves, I have had trans activists and rabid leftists attacking me for a clip that we are going to watch together. So let's just play the clip. Look how ratchet my phone is. What?
When did you feel, if you can remember, when did you feel like something was off? That you were supposed to be a girl?
5.
At 5?
Yeah, I remember being in preschool. My earliest memories in life were feeling the only way I can describe it was a very intense misalignment between the way I was perceived and the way I had my self-concept. So I would say 5, but obviously I didn't have the words to articulate it at 5.
Was that when you first started going? Did you go to preschool?
Mm-hmm.
So was that when you were around other kids? Is that
Yes.
when you started feeling it?
Yeah. First of all, preschool is kind of the earliest time people even have memories, but also that's when you start being socially separated by gender. It's I have a very vivid memory of the boys' cubby area where you put your backpack and your schoolwork, and the girls, and it was the girls was pink, the boys was blue, and that's superficial, but you start to see the division really early. And I just had this inherent sense that I would never be able to fit into a maleness ever. I don't know why.
Everything I stated in that interview about my own life and my own experience is facts. So the claim is that I am somehow hypocritical for saying that I felt gender dysphoria at 5, which, if you look at the studies, people who genuinely have lifelong persisting gender dysphoria typically start experiencing that at ages as young as 5. That has nothing to do with the child's ability to consent, and on a personal level, that has nothing to do with my ability to consent at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, to transition, surgeries, chemical castration, drugs, lifelong medicalization, deciding if I want to have children in the future at that young age. Please make it make sense. Please make it make sense that me talking about my own experience somehow contradicts the truth that children cannot consent to transition. It doesn't make any sense. Rather than be happy that a trans woman is on the largest podcast on the planet and just be appreciative of that good old representation that they claim that they want at every turn, I've gotten nothing but hate from the community, which is fine. I'm used to it. Duh. However, they really think they got me. Like, they think it's a huge gotcha. In response to one of my tweets, someone named Ari on Twitter posted the video as a gotcha, and she said, she could be such an important voice for trans acceptance to conservatives, and instead, she just ignores her own actual experience to tell them exactly what they want to hear. Ari, here's the thing. I am fully aware of my own experience and not ignoring a damn thing. That's why I'm going on the world's largest podcast and telling something very personal, telling a very personal story. I mean, if you can't process that a trans adult who, I don't know, maybe has very intimate, specific knowledge of what a transition entails, could possibly come to this just radical conclusion that that's something best reserved for adults rather than minors, I don't know what world you're living in. It's very disturbing, actually. I am never going to compromise my beliefs that the innocence of children should be protected, that the body parts of children should be protected. I don't know why you're fighting for the opposite. And I'm sure you think I'm a monster for my position, but guess what? The feeling's mutual. If you believe someone can consent to having their penis removed as a teenager, you're a monster. I have no problem saying that. Insert everyone screaming, that never happens, except you guys kind of effed up when you aired an entire reality show about a minor, Jazz Jennings, getting her vaginoplasty. Yeah, and the thousands of detransitioners coming out, all of which end up in my email box, so sorry, you can't lie. And as far as telling everyone what they want to hear, I'm pretty sure there's a very well carved out path for trans people to just spout all the exact same lines like a damn hive mind drone and be patted on the head for it, be given shows on CNN for it, be on TV for it, be in part of all these organizations. Is there anyone who doubts that if I just sat up here every day and said children should be able to transition, there are 97 genders and white people are the root of all evil in the world, that I wouldn't have had 2 shows on CNN by now? Like, I've never even been on Fox News. What's the telling people what they want to hear, and what exactly is the gain? I have a successful YouTube channel and a successful podcast that I am constantly under threat of being censored or banned from the liberals who run YouTube. So am I really telling everyone what they want to hear? I'm certainly not telling YouTube what they want to hear. I'm certainly not telling you and the mob behind you what they want to hear. Hunter Avalon also posted as a gotcha that I was being hypocritical by this, that how could I possibly, have felt gender dysphoria at 5 and still think that children can't consent to transition, as if those are contradictory thoughts. But what's so funny, true story. The last time I saw or heard of Hunter Avalon, who used to be like a right-wing YouTuber and then switched up, the last time I saw or heard of him was at a hotel at a convention that we both had done. It was a bunch of YouTubers hanging out in a hotel room. He started calling an ex-YouTuber named Theron Meyer a man to her face, would not say sorry, made Theron cry, and then he started crying because everyone took Theron's side, who was crying over him being a dick. So I say that to say, like, these people are walking, talking projections. Behind every, like, social justice warrior, lived out, woke, like, is a history of probably the exact behavior that they are trying to come for someone else for doing. People can say I'm transphobic all day, every day. I've never looked at a trans woman in the face and be like, you're a man, you're a he. Like, that was so crazy. And, like, regardless of how you feel about trans issues, like, it's really nuts to just be that rude for no reason to a nice person. So glad Hunter's now taken up the mantle for trans people and coming for me, but anyways, another thing is the main reason it's so funny to me that people are trying to point out some sort of hypocrisy here by me telling my own story and still holding the beliefs I have, is that in the exact same episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, I talked about being against children transitioning, and I actually had pushback from Joe. I was further, like, in the anti-children transitioning category than Joe Rogan himself. So for people to act as if they have the moral high ground when advocating for what will undoubtedly, in probably just a few years here, be considered the lobotomies of the 21st century, you really don't have a moral high ground. And unfortunately, you're losing on this issue, because many of the countries that at one time these activists looked back and said, we're pointing to Sweden, we're pointing to Australia, we're pointing to the UK, and look, they're so progressive and they're letting kids transition. All those countries are reversing their guidelines. In fact, every country I just named is reversing their policy on kids transitioning. In May of this year, Sweden completely ended prescribing hormones, cross-sex hormones, and puberty blockers to minors, and is now working on outlawing double mastectomies on underage girls as well. Australia is currently in the process of reversing their guidelines based on puberty blockers, stating that they are not indeed reversible and that there needs to be psychological care given to these children before being placed on medications that alter their body permanently. Go figure. You know, I always state that in California, it's illegal to use a tanning bed under the age of 18, but you can get a double mastectomy, you can go on cross-sex hormones that sterilize you for life, and you can go on puberty blockers. Make it make sense. Tavistock, which is a gender clinic in the UK, which specialized in treating kids, minors, is completely shutting down after a report revealed that it is not safe or viable to transition children. And this was once the clinic that people here in the States would point to and be like, look at the UK, they're getting it right. They're providing life-saving care for trans youth. Stop. I would even say that just because I had gender dysphoria at 5 did not mean I was a trans kid at 5. I had no concept of what trans was. I was experiencing a very real medical condition, which is gender dysphoria. But the fact remains that there's so many different ways that gender dysphoria can go for a kid. It can completely dissolve. It can even mitigate mostly to the point where someone could live a decent life without needing to transition. And that might be good enough for them. And you would think with all these people saying that gender has no look, gender has no genitals, gender has no body parts, gender is whatever you want it to be, wouldn't be in a rush to alter the body parts of kids. Right? But again, that's asking you guys to make way more sense than you're capable of. Like, I've come to the conclusion they're just not capable of it. Gender dysphoria could have dissolved for me in all likelihood once I became a teenager or once I became a young adult. It didn't. And that still doesn't change the fact that I was not able to consent as a kid to anything that would have been permanent or life-altering. Even in my early 20s when I started my transition, I was not in a headspace to actually make the decision if I wanted to have kids or not. And once I was deep enough in my transition, I've talked about this on my channel before, like once I actually met someone I started thinking about having kids with, it came later in life, much later than me starting my transition. And at that point I was like, well, now I've been on hormones for years and no doctor ever told me to freeze my sperm. And you know, it's like, kids can't make that choice. I could barely make that choice in my young 20s. I don't think I should have been outlawed to make that choice, by the way. If you can vote and serve in the army and whatever, you should be able to do what you want with your body. However, the fact remains that these are just not decisions that kids can make. Maybe all these people, other than like the crazy like trans parents, maybe all these people that are online pushing for the chemical castration of children, the physical castration of children, maybe they just never met a kid really as an adult, and they're just so childless in their life. None of their friends have kids. Like, they don't understand that like 12-year-olds are, and I'm not saying this to be offensive, obviously 12-year-olds are stupid. Like they can't make this, like, try meeting a kid and then tell me they can do that. Actually, maybe some of y'all need to stay away from kids since you have this obsession with removing their limbs. It's a bit of a red flag when people have to keep explaining consent to you. Like, if you're one of these people that is always in these battles and people are just screaming at you about consent, it might be you, babe. You might be the problem. Like, normal, well-adjusted people with like a healthy grip on reality don't need to constantly be yelled at about consent. And again, it's not about stopping trans people from having the right to transition or people from having the right to get whatever surgeries they want. It's not about that. It's about the very blatant, obvious reality that it's not really actually transgender people anymore getting surgeries. It's every 13-year-old on TikTok who's convinced that them liking a certain movie or them having a certain personality trait means that they have gender dysphoria. Actually, they've even removed that. They want to have these kids consent to surgeries and hormones while even removing the idea that gender dysphoria is a precursor to wanting those things. They don't want gender dysphoria to even be a prerequisite to being trans anymore, and so they don't even realize it, but they remove their own arguments. And guess what? People are catching up to it. You know, the United States is, for whatever reason, just going hard AF, despite all these other European countries rolling back those guidelines and being like, this is actually going to be a really huge scandal when these kids become of age, and we want to just make sure we're not, you know, getting ourselves involved in any crazy lawsuits, which are coming up, by the way. As someone who has my ear to the detransitioner streets, those are coming. Thousands of kids every day are captured by gender ideology, by TikTokers convincing them they're trans.
Hi kids! There's no such thing as a boy or a girl, and I can prove it. So gather around the family, the parents, everybody.
So I'm going to be showing you how to use emoji pronouns in sentences. Did you know that any emoji can be used as pronouns?
You know, that's why entire friend groups transition. Why the f would a friend group transition? Why am I once a month seeing a viral TikTok about a friend group transitioning? How is that a thing? Yeah, this affliction of gender dysphoria that supposedly affects 0.00001% of the population just so happens to appear in an entire friend group in the same school. Sure. And by the way, to everyone who wants to catch anyone in some sort of hypocrisy, how about we check out Rachel Levine, who recently went on stage and said how she was so appreciative of the fact that she has children and the fact that she transitioned late enough in life that she could have kids, but still supports children not having that same right and option.
But I have no regrets, because if I transitioned when I was young, and I wouldn't have my children. I can't imagine a life without my children. And so every experience led me to here. And so how could I regret that?
This isn't even just doublethink. This is not thinking at all, actually. There's actually no thought. It's just like, this is what my team wants me to say, so I'm going to say it. It doesn't matter if everything I'm saying is contradicting it. That's what that is. Disgusting. You have this person up in Biden's ear every day, pushing him to allow kids to transition and make statements about it, and he's actually doing it. Meanwhile, the FDA just updated warnings on Lupron, which is the puberty blocker and the actual drug given to pedophiles and people undergoing cancer, saying that it may cause brain swelling. So, with all these countries reversing the guidelines allowing children to transition, with all these tens of thousands of detransitioners coming out, I don't know why anyone thinks they're on the right side of history if their idea of the right side of history involves children losing their penises. I don't know. Make it make sense. You can't. Don't even try. And with that being said, I love you guys. Make sure you subscribe to this channel as well as my podcast channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I hope you have an amazing, happy new year. I hope you get everything you want this year, genuinely and truly. You know, side note, I believe in New Year's resolutions. People get very pessimistic and annoying about it, and you should be bettering yourself every year, all year. It's like, yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but if people are choosing now to get their life or body in order, good on you. So you're gonna kill it this year. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.